Hey, welcome back, everybody, to BackTrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and my bocce is a little rusty, but I'm joined on this episode by my co-host,
McClunky. I'm Gooey Fame.
Bad start. And we've returned to explore the inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek. But in this week's edition, we're exploring what is maybe the inspiration behind the continued existence of Star Trek. Citation needed.
Yeah, there's some conflicting movies out there that they claim, but
a little chocolate in the peanut butter, a little peanut butter in the chocolate, maybe,
right.
And we'll talk about that. I guess I just realized, like, after 25 shows in, we never actually present what we're going to talk about at the top of the show. And, you know, I don't think it's necessary. Like, listeners can read, like, the description of the show. Yeah, I don't feel the need to do it necessarily, but in case anybody wonders why we're doing that, no, we never made a choice. It's just the way it felt natural to do.
No, I like it. We just kind of, we settle in, I think.
Yeah, we ease into it. You know what's coming. Speaking of what's coming or what's going on, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just I'm still working, still keeping busy. So it's I may have said this before, but like life is pretty similar, but just way weirder. So I don't know. Yeah. How about you?
Pretty much the same thing, and it's like we live in a weird time in history for a lot of reasons, but it's definitely a time where when you see somebody and then you see them a few weeks later and you ask them, you know, what's new, and they're like, same thing. You know, it is the same thing. Like, nobody has taken a trip anywhere, nobody has hopefully had any huge upheavals in their lives, and they're just kind of doing the exact same thing still.
It's insane because it is like things, you know, week to week have been the same, but then you think like the idea of thinking about like what is next week gonna be also seems weird, you know, like trying to think a week ahead in the future seems so insane. Yeah, planning ahead is certainly strange, and as we move into kind of our, I don't know, not a lot of news this week, but kind of our news section, I've been planning to, or had been planning to go to the Star Trek Las Vegas convention this year. And as the quarantine and the social distancing stretches on, the prospect of that becomes less and less feasible. And now recently, in the last couple of days, with this interview that Anderson Cooper did with the mayor of Las Vegas, oh my God,
and learning what an absolute kook she is, and just completely unconcerned about the health of her citizenry or the people that will visit her city. Now I don't know if I want to go, even if they have it.
No, yeah. When you see stuff like that, I've said this before, and it feels kind of dark, but it does feel like sometimes that we're like one of the planets they visit in like the original series or Next Gen, and they're like, wow, they're pretty screwed up. Like, I mean, I guess that's the point of the show sometimes. But... yeah,
I mean, that is the point of the show, but do we have to be like 6 of those planets like merged together? We have to be the planet that's like, you know, wiping each other out in the Armageddon factor or whatever, and we got to be the planet that's controlled by Landru. We have to be the planet that like
you're right,
is overpopulated and is doing the modern dance routine, and yeah.
They could just do a show, and maybe this is just Deep Space Nine or something, where you just hang out on one planet for a whole season.
Yeah.
Try to solve all their problems.
Yeah. I just want to be on like a one Star Trek planet, just, you know, the planet where they wear hats on their butts or whatever it is. Just, you know, one thing that's different. Yeah.
Can we just be the Justice planet where like everything rocks except we'll kill you on sight for messing with the flowers?
Yeah. I'd even take Angel 1 at this point, you know, let the women just be in charge and do what they want, and I'll wear perfume and everything's fine.
Yeah, that all sounds like paradise.
Yeah, except for they also have immediate capital punishment for, you know, any crime above spitting on the street. Yeah.
Kill me with the orb thing. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. Just put me in the thing that you melted that vase in.
Oh, God.
Yeah, bad news. A lot of that capital punishment going around in early TNG. News is not a ton of news.
Sure.
There's a couple sort of show announcements, not really announcements, kind of from questionable sources and outlets, so you need to keep a grain of salt as you read it. But Jonathan Frakes has said that he is involved with future shows. Now, people have taken this to mean that he will be at least directing on new CBS Trek series that we haven't heard about or been announced yet. And there are some that are in the works, not confirmed. So people think that's what it is. People also have speculated that maybe he'll be back for another season of Picard. We don't know. We'll see. There's also been a news story that LeVar Burton has said that he is in talks to join season 2 of Picard. Again, nothing confirmed there. A while back, Robert Picardo said that he had been talking with the people behind Picard as well, so we could see some familiar faces in season 2 of Picard. I'd have to imagine they're absolutely going to do that, because that was one of the highlights, I think, of the first season of Picard, is seeing some of those old stars. I don't mean old, I mean classic.
There's no reason not to. I think they might as well. I'm sure anyone would be down to come back, right?
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, unless they just don't want to do that stuff anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
I wouldn't mind seeing Roxanne Dawson, but she's such an in-demand director and producer now. I don't know, maybe she'd come back and perform. You look at a lot of these people's IMDb pages, and it's not necessarily a lot of credits, in the mid 2000s to now, but some of them do just do stuff. They'll just drop in and do things. And then there's people like Robert Picardo, who has never stopped working. I saw Hail Caesar the other day, which I hadn't seen when it came out in 2015, and Robert Picardo's got a huge role in it.
Oh yeah. I saw that back in the day, and I popped for that when that happened, when he was there. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe this doesn't say a lot about Picard, but one of my favorite episodes was when him and Riker were just chilling, making pizzas and stuff.
Yeah.
I would there's room to do that with one character per season. Just have the pizza episode.
Oh, for sure.
So get Geordi in there. There's so much potential things you could do too with some of the underutilized characters. I think
people were really they really popped for Kestra. Kestra Troy Riker, the daughter of the Rikers, or Troy Rikers. So to not have her come back, I think would be a shame. There's a lot of elements I think that they should look into
totally
bringing back. The problem is that the way that they make TV now, or at least streaming TV and on CBS All Access, is that there's only 10 or 12, 13 episodes. And so it isn't like the old days where you're literally, sure, you've got a lot of cards on the board, but at some point in the writing process, you're like, we need 3 more episodes, guys. What do we do? Should we just do a remake of a TOS, or do we get that newspaper out? Let's look at the science section and the headlines or something like that. You're definitely pushing, I think, to fill out the schedule. And when it comes to having a 10-episode show, yeah, it'd be fun to bring Kestra back, but what's the actress doing? Does she look young enough still? Just screw it. Let's just have more Borg or something.
Yeah. Every year that goes on, every new Star Trek thing, I feel myself becoming the cranky old person that I hate complaining about the new stuff,
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the deli where the old men are.
Yeah, I was listening to your final episode about it, and even though I enjoyed the series enough, I was kind of why don't they just make 22 episodes and make them all standalone? And why don't they just make old Star Trek? Just shaking my fist.
There's a lot. The production value is clearly very high. The show looks great, and there are a lot of expensive-looking set pieces. But for all that, there's still a bunch of scenes where it's just 2 people talking to each other. Yeah. And so I think if they just paced that out a little more, they could squeeze 5, 6 more episodes out of the money they've got, and then just give us. Think of all the great scenes of Captain Picard. Is it him swinging from a rope? No, it's him talking to somebody, or just getting mad about something and yelling some Shakespeare at somebody. So, I think that they could just do that, but I'm not sure that they don't think that that's what we want.
Those were the best moments of Picard, I thought too.
Those were the best of times.
Yeah, exactly.
Use Charles Dickens. It's Shakespeare's birthday, by the way, and his death day.
Oh, whoa! Really? I didn't know that. That's a cool factoid.
That guy hit his cue. He's like, "Okay, that's it. I came in. I'm going out. Exit."
That's a good twist that only he would pull off, I guess.
Yeah. Molière died on stage.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which you never want to do. He was which I think it was the Accidental Doctor or one of his plays. He was doing the show. I think he finished the show. He was doing the show, and he's like, and kind of worked it into the part, and then came off stage and was done with his part, and then he passed away backstage.
Oh, at least it wasn't in front of people, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be too grim.
That would be kind of grim. Let's talk about another star that has appeared in the podcast firmament. Garrett Wang and Robert Duncan McNeil, the actors behind Harry Kim and Tom Paris, have started their own Voyager rewatch podcast called the Delta Flyers Podcast. And let me be the first to say, get off of my turf.
Wow. It's called the Delta Flyers, too?
Yeah, with apologies to my friend Thad, who has a podcast called the Delta Flyer Podcast. But I guess when you're a big star, you have to watch your own show and then talk about it on a podcast.
Wow, there's so many layers, in my opinion, of bogus to this.
Yeah. It's one thing if you are the guys from Scrubs and you're like, we ain't got anything better to do. Let's do a Scrubs podcast.
That's pushing it too.
but this is basically that. It's like, we were buddies on the show. We're buddies in real life. We're going to watch our show, which from a totally neutral perspective sounds like a pretty fun idea. Or the Office Ladies podcast, right? But from the perspective of a guy who is now competing with you for listens, get off my lawn.
Absolutely. And this reminds me, and you know what? People are going to do it, but it's the podcast equivalent of bands doing reunion tours for their albums and playing the whole tour, which my band did, so I'm not going to come too hard against them. But I would predict that this is going to be the new trend. You know what I mean? There's going to be...
Oh, it already is a trend, yeah.
There's going to be a Becker rewatch podcast.
I would watch... I would listen to that. Or the Seinfeld thing. He just takes the comedians in the cars and the coffee and he just extends it into, we're going to talk about Seinfeld.
Absolutely. That's for sure going to happen. But it's never going to be like the main person, you know what I mean? It's going to be Wayne Knight and I don't know, and maybe Michael Richards or whatever.
Yeah, together.
Yeah,
that might heal this country just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
That I would listen to.
Yes,
sure.
That is what we need.
Yeah, Michael Richards and crap, I can't remember the actor who plays Newman. His name.
Wayne Knight,
also,
right?
Wayne Knight. Yeah. I thought when you said Wayne Knight, I was thinking Wayne Brady, and I thought Wayne Brady would be the perfect guy to have on a podcast with Michael Richards. That would that would mend all the fences and the bridges.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I already thought like this has potential healing powers, but Newman and Mike, oh my god.
Right. Yeah, okay, that's what... Okay, see, I didn't know that. I really didn't know his name at all. So, yeah, to me, Wayne Knight and Wayne Brady.
I don't know how I knew his name. I just somehow pulled it out. Maybe I so much got absorbed from listening to the Space Jam credits and just seeing the name or something.
Yeah, Space Jam. Yeah, so anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'll give that a listen. But,
no offense, but the two guys doing it are like not a draw for me. Like I don't know anything about them. I just mean in terms of who they portrayed and like just not characters I care about at all. So no, I'm not a big Voyager stan. So
who would be a draw for you from the world of Voyager?
Well, probably Jerry Ryan. I think she's cool. You know what? Because didn't like Kate Mulgrew hate Jerry Ryan? Isn't that a story? Isn't that like a rumor?
That I'd love to know, Kate. So first of all, in terms of broadcasting, Jerry Ryan has a very active Instagram because she posts a lot. Her husband, I guess, is like a French chef. And so he does food videos. And so there's a lot going on if you want to know more about her on her Instagram. And then Kate Mulgrew, I don't think she has like a long running podcast, but she is doing like digital fireside chats right now where she's having friends and then like some fans on and doing like a little Zoom thing. Yeah. So both of those people, well, they're busy, but I think they're, in that neighborhood. I'd like to see the Robert Picardo, Ethan Phillips podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say Robert Picardo seems like, to me, I just get the best vibes from him,
Yeah. This would be, just to use like my 90s WWF brain, the Garrett Wang, Robert Duncan McNeil is the Christian and Edge. It's like, yeah, they're fine, okay.
Yeah, okay.
You like them, fine. But the Picardo and Phillips one, that's the Scotty Too Hottie and Too Cool. That's the Too Cool one. Where it's like, whoa, what are these guys going to do?
I think you made the appeal to for a lot of people, like, the opposite direction.
Oh, okay.
But I'm with you. I was all about Too Cool.
Yeah. It's so weird because the gimmicks are so stupid, but it's so funny that's why wrestling, oh God, we're talking about wrestling again. That's why wrestling has broad appeal, I think, is because, the kids love the gimmicks, and for as dumb as they are, McMahon knows what he's doing. He delivers Coco Beware, he's got the bird. The guy can't wrestle, but he's got the bird.
Sure. Yeah.
But then you grow up and you're an adult and you're like, oh shit! Did you see like that the move that Chris Benoit did? And he took the guy down, and they're doing this spot and that spot, and it's like, oh yeah, it's so great. It appeals to different levels.
Yeah, and for me, it cycles back and forth.
Do you think what's the documentary that they just did about Benoit?
Oh, the Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring.
That's like a series they have on Vice. I haven't watched any of those, but
I haven't either. I don't. His legacy is always going to be complicated by what happened, but I think that hopefully I think we can get to a place where we can kind of talk about him again, because he just basically disappeared completely from all, WWE media. And I understand why, but I feel like other sports have people, stars who have amazing careers and then, do things, and there's a darker side of their life, and we're more okay with that. Like that we just, we've talked about Space Jam, and then we just had The Last Dance, which is like this huge documentary that came out about Jordan.
Right, right.
That's fine. Like all the crazy and kind of fucked up things that he did. But like, Chris Benoit, like we can't even talk about him. So I don't know.
Yeah, well I think that's just because so much of the discussion is like controlled by the people who are marketing it, where it's like, yeah there's the NBA or whatever, but there's so many independent, mainstream, journalists covering basketball compared to wrestling,
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, the end of his life was, it certainly defined a lot of the conversation, but he wasn't just that. And also they don't want to talk about it because of the factors that led to the way that his life ended. Do you know what I mean? Like we talk about head injury and CTE and its effects on behavior. And like, I watched him get hit in the head 500 times. So do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's weird.
I'm putting everyone on trial.
Yeah. I like recently watched the ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view where it was like, post them getting brought into the WWE, and it ends with like them fighting off a bunch of wrestlers, and there's a part where Stone Cold Steve Austin, they're all beating up Eric Bischoff, and Steve Austin's like, he's like, Benoit, give him one of those headbutts, and it's just like, no, and he climbs up the rope, and Stone Cold's like, kill this man, and I'm like, oh my god. It's just so weird watching, someone who's kind of the emissary for WWE commanding Chris Benoit to kill a man with a headbutt.
Yeah, it's weird.
Anyway, where'd we go?
The Sandman's doing okay, right? He had a little trouble with the police a little while ago, but his whole gimmick was getting hit in the head. But he turned out okay.
Most of his time was like coming to the ring, I guess. So
yeah,
that gave him some extra hours to his life.
All right. Well, we're going to cut all that out.
Yeah, sure. File that in the archives.
Who knows? Yeah, we'll just have a whole separate wrestling podcast made out of just random comments from us. But let's finally get to our featured subject for today's show. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a galaxy called Van Nuys, work began on a film called The Star Wars. It was the pet project of a young experimental USC Film School graduate named George Lucas. This $8 million film was envisioned by Lucas as a Flash Gordon-esque sci-fi adventure that would ape the Saturday matinee serials of his youth. What it would end up being was a cultural phenomenon and money-making machine that would influence film, pop culture, and regular culture for the next 40 years. The film's final title on release, Star Wars.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come. Coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello. No caution, no caution!
It's an epic of heroes.
Good luck.
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
Such a good name.
Yes, Disney Plus presents a 20th Century Fox film, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, brought to you by Pepsi. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I hate that. We talked about finding the right version of this to watch, right?
Oh my god, you just kicked the hornet's nest.
Oh, is that, do we even want to talk about that?
Well, so in preparing for this, I think I've mentioned on the show that I've been having computer troubles, and I have a tower PC that honestly I haven't used regularly in 5 years. Like, I'm a laptop guy now for all my work and stuff, and my laptop is good enough that, and I don't actually PC game as much as I used to, but if I am even playing games, I'm doing it on my nice, ultra 4K laptop. So I've got this tower computer, and it's mainly a media server, like all my media stuff is on there. And it's got two hard drives. It's got a media hard drive that's got all my music, TV shows, and like comic books. And then it's got, the system drive, which also, I've had this computer for 8 years, so it's just got all my anything personal or like downloads. My music is on there. Well, a couple weeks ago, the media drive failed, and I haven't been able to get it to work or recover it yet. And I thought, that's bad, but, do I need to own TV shows and movies? They're mostly on the internet. Well, as I sat down to watch Star Wars, the Harmy's despecialized edition, which is like a Ultra HD 4K remaster of the original cuts with all the special edition stuff taken out, the hard drive failed on the regular computer. So now the computer won't boot up at all, and the Star Wars was on that thing. So I was really pissed, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to have to download this movie because I'm not getting Disney Plus, but I don't want to get a huge file. I'll grab whatever I can get. And I ended up getting the 2011 Blu-ray restoration, a fairly good-looking copy, not as good as the one I had. And sure enough, 34 minutes in, when we get to the dewback scene, yeah, they're CGI dewbacks. And I'm like, this is the special. It's the special edition, goddammit.
Yeah, it's wild because there's like little bits and things that like it's like, oh, that feels weird, and then once they get to that, it's like they just like keep piling it on in that whole section of the film. It's really weird.
And I don't want this entire talk from me, my side, to be complaining about how I had to watch the special edition when I had the original ones all ready to go. But it might be a little bit of that.
I didn't either, but I was like, I could still watch this, and I've seen the movie 1,000 times, so like it's easy to just kind of like retroactively filter out like all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to. I never watched it. I got the trial, the Disney Plus trial, and I just wanted to see like what's this McClunky all about. It was like a meme, when it happened. I don't know if anyone ever figured that out, but I hope whatever the reason is a good reason.
All right, we're talking about changes. Every change is worthless.
Yeah.
None of them are any good. Like you watch it and they make all these changes and every single one of them is the sweatiest bit that you can imagine. Until we get to like McClunky in the next 10 years, if they redo it again, maybe we'll really get into like weird, surreal comedy or something like that. It'll start to get like an Adult Swim show or something. Cause McClunky, I can't understand at all. But all the changes they made in the late 90s, like, this, we're going to add a scene where there's extra dewbacks and dinosaurs or something. And then like a droid punches another droid. It's all this like goofy, B-roll, like Muppets comedy type stuff, which doesn't not exist in the trilogy. But all those additions are like, why? It's not necessary.
Yeah, it's really goofy.
There's like a world that's established, and it's this weird goulash in Star Wars of the sort of ridiculous, the sort of serious but also ridiculous. Like the scene where the guys are all sitting around the table and they're talking about like, we've got to maintain control in the provinces and this station is the ultimate power in the universe, and they're doing it completely straight, but it's ridiculous, And then you've got like high as a fucking kite Harrison Ford just kind of going, it's good against living, this is good against different blasters and droids or whatever. And you're like, what? Like there's like this, and then there's like these weird like vaudeville like jokey bits between him and Luke, and it all mashes together into this strange universe that you just kind of go, it just kind of works.
It's amazing, yeah.
But if you take a digital syringe and you inject a bunch of like Muppet humor and Jar Jar fart jokes, it throws the entire thing out of whack.
Yeah, I would say, at least with like Phantom Menace, like it was like that from conception, So like even like the terrible nightmare world that he envisioned for that at least feels like semi-consistent in a like weird way.
It's consistently bad and wooden, yeah.
Yeah, whereas this is like, it's like it teases you with like almost like prequel vibes for some reason.
Yeah. And of course, and they're just superfluous. Like they don't really affect anything. There's later changes that do kind of affect story and character motivation, which is the biggest sin. Of course, I'm not, pointing out the Han shot first thing, which is just like, it's just insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So I apologize for going there, but I wanted to know if anyone ever solved the mystery of McClunky.
McClunky happened so late too in the process. Like he didn't even own this stuff anymore. So was he behind McClunky? Somebody has a huge boner for Harrison Ford, aka Han Solo, not shooting this guy first. And I don't know what the problem. They kill potentially millions of people in the film. Up until a certain point, I'm not sure what it was in his cinematic history, but like Star Wars featured like the most on-screen deaths of anything until like Star Trek 2009, right? When they blow up Vulcan. It's an entire moon full of guys in white suits who all die. So what's the problem with him killing a guy who was threatening to kill him?
Literally like 3 minutes before Obi-Wan chops a guy's hands off.
Yeah, he chops a guy's hands off, butt-faced guy's hands off. Yeah, maybe McClunky translates to "I'm in great pain. Please end it for me." Or
that's what I was thinking, but I don't know. But that being said, I was able to I'm filtering this out. I think I can appreciate. I can see the original through it. You know.
How many? So you said you've seen it thousands of times, but could
probably
you
not really. Yeah.
Put a real number on it?
No, I don't think so. Because I watched it. It was just on It wasn't one of my favorite movies as a kid, but it just was. It was just something that was always there. It wasn't like a movie that I liked. It was just something.
I couldn't really put a number on it either. For two reasons. One, and I think I might have talked about this on the show before, but when I was a kid, when I was in early grade school, this is right when VCRs were becoming sort of publicly available. Like anybody, especially an institution that was spending government money, could get their hands on a VCR. And so one of the few VHS tapes that you could show a kid, you're not going to show them Blame It on Rio or whatever, you're going to show them Star Wars. And so whenever there was any kind of pause and play academically, or just some vacation weekend, or even early on a Friday, they'd just throw on Star Wars. So I'd seen Star Wars probably 50 times before I even left the 6th grade. And then when I got to college, it was right around the time that this whole Star Wars dystopia that we're now ensconced in began. This is when the stirrings of the prequels were starting. They released Star Wars in a remastered version in theaters. Then they released the special edition in theaters. And then we got the prequels. And so at that time, this is right around the time that I started to have my own money, that I was joining the workforce and also joining, the economy. And so what was I going to spend my money on? Star Wars stuff.
Right,
and so when I was bored at school, we just throw on our VHS box set, the THX remasters of the original release, which is the last version. I think there's a Laserdisc that came after, but that's basically the last version that you can get before, it's all special edition. There is no DVD copy, I don't think, that doesn't have the changes. And I can't find that VHS. I look at all these boxes in my room. It's somewhere. I can't find it.
Yeah, I held on to those for a long time. Even in 2010, when I lived with a bunch of roommates and stuff, if we watched Star Wars, we would watch those copies of it.
I'll open the safe. Yeah. Both I've seen it a million times. Both are familiar with the various changes and edits and stuff like that. I guess we're going to be talking essentially about the special edition today, but we both have the memory of the real edition in our minds. And I'll tell you, we talk about facts and things like that. Screw facts. Let's do legends. I didn't feel like doing a ton of research for this, just because I think what we know will probably sustain us. And I wanted to talk about really the impression and the emotions of Star Trek and Star Wars and Star Trek the Motion Picture, because I think that's what's important here. You can look at the numbers. Clearly the numbers inspired Paramount to try to do a Star Trek film, but how do they relate to each other in terms of what they are trying to say and what they're delivering to their audience?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't. Okay, I'm ready to get into that. I guess I didn't even consider it necessarily. I was just thinking watching it and seeing some of the special effects and stuff. Just what kept going through my mind was someone going well, by God, why don't we make this for Star Trek? But
we did that first. Yeah.
I love that idea because both of these movies are they're definitely dealing with similar emotions, but in kind of different ways, I guess.
Yes, I think. Although I think the difference between them boils down to the literal differences between what people get out of Star Wars and what they get out of Star Trek. Star Trek, and I guess we're already talking about it. I mean, Star Trek the Motion Picture is literally about the search for the unknown, and man seeing his desire to find the unknown reflected directly back at him. And Star Wars is, I don't want to say I don't know. It's about evil's bad. That's a great place to start. What is Star Wars about?
At the surface level, I think it's, it's there kind of, well, I was going to say it's there in the beginning, but the first 15 minutes of this movie are two robots zinging each other. So that's kind of weird.
It really is. That's always been one of my favorite things about Star Wars, is just the fact that that's what it is. The fact that it just begins, and it's all part of, Lucas's plan to sort of homage, history differs on whether it was always going to be episode 4 and there were 9 parts or whatever, but he always knew that he wanted to pick it up like there was something that you were supposed to know before. And it does that so well. And it just starts, and it's about, we don't know, as far as it's about an old guy with a helmet on. He's the first guy that we zoom in on his face and you think, is this our guy? Are we following this guy? And then 10 seconds later, dead, blown away. And you're like, well, it's not that guy. And then we're just going to float over to these robots. And then now we're like, I hope these robots get off this desert planet. And it isn't until somebody calls out Luke, and that leitmotif, that music hits, that we go,
so good.
This is our hero. We found our hero now. Yeah.
So once they get to him, I feel like the movie says what it is right there, but it's kind of basic, I guess, but maybe there's more depth to it. But just the call to adventure, it's this boy who doesn't want to be a farmer,
It's so simplistic, though, because even the movies that it's nominally based on, westerns, Hollywood westerns, and samurai films are almost always about something, at least the ones I've seen. Even when Toshiro Mifune is not cutting people down, he's thinking about what it means to protect people or be a samurai, or, if it's right for him to take life. And, many of the John Ford westerns were also about that sort of thing, if not in also a somewhat simplistic way, good guys and bad guys.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, they've really stripped it down in this. So, almost, I guess there's a whole there's some philosophy happening there at some point where they're talking about the Force and it binding things together, but it's a little beyond me, what that really means for anyone in this movie necessarily. But I don't know, maybe it's just you go out in this adventure, you find your spiritual calling, you blow up a ship, a space station, I don't know.
Yeah. We know that, Joseph Campbell didn't, he didn't pass a law that said that every adventure movie has to follow these rules. He just sort of looked at all the myths that had come before and said, well, here's something that just happens. And then, of course, in this sort of self-reflexive, metatextual world that we live in the late 20th century, and now George Lucas is like, well, I'll just take that and that'll be my guide. And so you get something that is, I don't mean this in an overly critical way, but something that is the skeleton of that type of story, but lacks sort of cultural context and background to be a story on its own. It literally is just oh, I'm a kid that doesn't know anything. And he's like, do you want adventure? No, thanks. I don't want adventure. It's well, you're going to have adventure. And then you're literally, in the belly of the trash compactor, and then you meet with the goddess, and he's just kind of literally hitting these things that aren't, George, you don't have to have all those things in there. These are things that just often appear in stories, but yet it still sort of works in a very, basic way.
It is boom, boom, boom. He's in the trash compactor.
He's literally, hitting every single thing. Yeah. The only thing he doesn't do is he doesn't return home.
Well, yeah, no. They for good reason, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's nothing to go back to. Yeah, I know. But he doesn't this is and again, remember, this is facts. This is feelings, not facts. How about that? This is influenced, I think Lucas has said in the past, by Dune in a lot of ways. I mean, he's literally on a sand planet, right? And they talk about spice. And so maybe it would be too much Dune if he went back to Tatooine and he made it rain somehow, you know?
Oh, I see. Yeah, there's almost something about, it's weird because it has this skeleton that almost, like, a lot of people kind of treat like, if you don't follow this, you've made a bad movie. But
yeah, but it isn't that at all. Yeah.
But yeah, it's
that's
not
forest for the trees stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's like almost like later films get so much more into the formula than anything, you know?
And if you follow it too much, you literally have Rey going back to Tatooine at the end of the 9th movie and going, I'm going to live here now. And you're like, why?
Why
would you do that?
Yeah.
What would be the point of that? Yeah.
I love that this movie is kind of relentless almost. Like, Luke's out there, he's going like, Yahoo! Like, and making jokes with Chewbacca or whatever when, like, you know, hours ago his family was murdered.
Yeah, it has to kind of clip along a little. And my Blu-ray version, and I'm sure the Disney Plus version, takes pains to put the that last Biggs Darklighter scene in where he's like, it's Biggs. I told you I'd finally make it. And then Biggs, you know, is literally killed 2 seconds before he comes back, and he's like, we did it. So yeah, we don't have time for our sorrows, as Leia says.
No, yeah.
Well, we're talking about endings. Let's talk about beginnings. The beginning of this film is, of course, one of the most iconic beginnings of all time, and it's by just not really trying to do all that much. All it really does is just, it hits you with the amazing sound design of Ben Burtt, and also the scope of it. So you've got this metaphor of the little ship and then the huge ship passing overhead, and all it is just a ship passing overhead. And this has been copied in so many films with people who just are only trying to borrow the visual aesthetic and don't understand, like, the metaphor of, what is being communicated here. And also, once it's done, it was done to shock the audience. And once that shock's happened, you can copy it in other films, but it's not going to help or work.
No, this is another case of, I think in a lot of movies, when we talk about movies on here that are like the foundational ones, where it's like, it's been kind of, you're like almost desensitized to it now, but it always works for me going back and watching this and just being like, this is incredible. I still get that same feeling.
Oh yeah, no, it works every time, and we immediately get a sense. It's sort of depersonalized because we're just seeing the technology and even robots. And we immediately get a sense of one of the huge pillars of their design strategy which was to create this used future, this amazing world where they're flying above planets and they've got talking robots and stuff, but everything would look like crap. It would all look used. This wouldn't be a Star Trek future where everybody's in bright clothes and the cardboard was very clean that the sets were made out of. It would be junk and found items. And I just imagine the guy who had to create C-3PO, like this gleaming golden robot, and then his boss gives him some sandpaper and a hammer and says, "You're not done." And it's just like, oh no, I have to ruin and distress like this amazing robot that I made.
No, you know what? This is probably different than the way they did it back then, but a couple years ago I was at a friend's wedding, and there was an old friend there I hadn't seen in years. He had moved to LA, and I was like, "Hey, what have you been up to?" And he's like, "Oh, I work on this Mandalorian show they're making." and I was like, "Oh, cool. What do you do?" And he's like, "My job is to, like, put dirt on the armor."
Sure.
I was like, that's great. That I would love that job.
Man, people love the Mandalorian, and I like it a lot. Like, I think it's really good. But it's a situation where we've got a lot of fandoms where the property in question is introducing new things and necessary things, and you got a lot of people saying that they don't like this and that, and then you get something else, either a side brand or a different brand that's kind of delivering something that's similar to what came before, and people love that. And so sometimes the intent behind that is disingenuous, or harmful, and other times it's not. and it involves both fandoms we're talking about today. But I think The Mandalorian gets caught up in that because it really is a very good show, but it really is like original series porn.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me think, because it really hit me going back and rewatching this, some of the like little imperfections and flaws that are, you know, crop up. Like, it feels so much more, you know, raw and genuine than some of this stuff where it's like, we've reimagined, you know, this era you like, but it's like now it's like so perfect, and you know, it's got Disney money or whatever. Like, even that with like Force Awakens and stuff like that, it like, it didn't hit me at the time when I saw it. I was like, wow, this is like the Star Wars that I like, you know. It's not this prequel stuff, but now I'm
girls.
There are no girls in this movie.
Oh, well, in this movie, yeah. But I just mean, like, I definitely think that The Mandalorian is, if George Lucas had, you know, gone to USC in the mid-2000s and then had made a TV show with a lot of money, it's exactly the show that he probably would have made.
Oh, sure.
Although I don't think he would have liked the desaturated color palette that's so popular now. He would have wanted those colors to pop for sure.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's a great show. But I just hate the fact that a lot of people who I don't agree with ideologically like it because it's not a girl's got a lightsaber or something.
Right. There's so many ways, and that's a thing in Star Trek fandom too, right? Obviously. Yeah. And there's so many places you can fall on it, and it's weird kind of being like caught up in the different camps, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's Culture Wars, A New Hope. A lot of this movie was shot in England, and people give Carrie Fisher a hard time for, you know, trying on an accent, but what do you want? She's surrounded by people that are talking the same way. And if you listen, Darth Vader's got an accent too, especially in that first scene.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's totally trying on a British accent. And the funny thing is, all of his little subordinate dudes are all these, you know, wispy, transparent, like British guy actors. And they're all dubbed to have like American, holding her is dangerous, like these like American accents. So I wonder what the deal was with that. Later on in the series, they'd definitely be more comfortable with just having the guys use their sort of British accents, because British means empirical and evil, or imperial.
Yeah, take that, Brits.
Yeah.
I mean, it works though, you know what I mean? Like for Tarkin or whatever. It's sweet. It's awesome.
And as I was looking at him in this fairly good picture copy that I watched, they definitely made him look sort of sickly, you know, and evil, but Peter Cushing also just kind of looked sickly and evil for the last part of his life. He got a lot of his roles like that.
Yeah, he looks like kind of skeletal.
Yeah, for sure.
It looks cool though. He looks pretty badass.
Oh yeah, he looks. I wouldn't want to mess with him. Parking his spot. There is so much competent filmmaking in this film, and I don't think it's Lucas. You hear lots of stories about, he had the idea. Yeah, he wrote this huge script, the Journal of the Wills or whatever, and it all came from his mind. But on set, a lot of people helped him do a lot of things. You know, his wife, quote unquote, saved the picture in the edit as the editor of the film. A lot of the people who are doing the lighting and his DP, he would tell them to do stuff and they'd be like, well, let's just do this instead and see if he notices. So I don't want to like impugn him as a filmmaker. And I think one of the tragedies of Star Wars is that we'll never really ever get a sense of Lucas as a filmmaker because he just became Star Wars man after this.
I know. It's kind of a letdown. But
there are there's just a lot of great camera work and film work in this film. Compared to like the prequels, which are almost all shot just on a stand, people just walking through. A lot of that is to support the effects, but it's just boring, static shots. And you've got amazing, cool decisions in this, like when the droids first get to the planet and they separate, and you know, 3PO's going one way and R2's tootling off in another direction. There's this shot where R2 is almost fully in the upper third of the frame, and the rest is all sand below him. And it seems like a weird decision, but when you think about it, they're on a planet that has like this huge open sky, but it feels so claustrophobic to just see the sand and not think about the fact that, they just came from space. Like they feel trapped on this planet, which is really cool. And later in the film, when Luke is at the end of the film, when he's in the trench run and Obi-Wan first speaks to him, there's this shot where he's in the trench, but the upper part of the frame is full of stars, above the trench. And it just gives you this idea of he's in this claustrophobic environment, but there's this larger world and larger universe that he's connecting to as he's tapping into the Force. Like that, you have to make that decision to get that shot. You have to say, I want to do that. Let's do this. And it's the kind of filmmaking that you just don't see in later Star Wars films.
Yeah, and it was weird how much it kind of surprised me, because again, it might have just been like my memory of Star Wars kind of as a whole, like blending together, Yeah. Where it's like I come back to watch this and be like so much stuff was kind of like taking me by surprise, being like, whoa, I did not expect that type of shot or whatever. Transition, maybe.
There's artistry. Yeah. Something that sucks about something becoming super popular is that everybody has access to it. That's not the sucky part, but people who have no idea what they're talking about can now sound off on it. And so you hear a lot of criticisms of things in the original trilogy, like Luke's too whiny. It's like, if you think about all three movies as a story, you want a guy who's complaining about not being able to play video games to then, by the end of the third movie, be like, I'm going to fight Darth Vader and the Emperor at once, and I'm willing to die to save my friends on this forest moon in a badass black outfit. Like, that was the point. That was always the point.
Right. And so I actually watched this with some friends, and one of them said that, and I was like, no. Like,
listen,
that is his aunt lays it out in the beginning too. She defends him, and I'm like, that's totally like, he's not whiny. He's a young adult who wants to go to school, and his uncle is like, no, you have to stay on this desert planet and farm. Like, would you be okay with that? You know what I mean? And he doesn't even put up that much of a, I don't know. Yeah, that just bugs me a little bit. And that's, I think, another thing too that gets us to these kind of like boring sanitized versions of this, where it's like, that's good. That's a great point. In a modern action thing, even if you had a character who was inexperienced or whatever, they would never let him, for a lot of reasons, they would never let the character look that way, because you wouldn't want your character to look like a whiny dick, because the actor wouldn't want to be seen playing a whiny dick. And I don't want to call it brave necessarily, but I think it's brave to let's portray the character in this way because we know where we're going. And then 30 years later, a bunch of dicks on the internet are like, he's too whiny. Yeah, it's so weird to me, because it's like, that's the closest thing you could get to it. But then after that, it's like his family is slaughtered, and he's taken by this old man who chops people's hands off to meet this scumbag who has some garbage ship to go off in space. Like, and if you're upset by that, I mean, sorry.
If he's cool, the Han Solo is less cool. He's about to meet Han Solo. You've got to have the two different poles there when they become a duo later in the film. And also, like, as far as his whininess goes, he's kind. He's kind to his slaves, who he probably doesn't even consider to be people, his robots.
Yeah.
And he's brave, he wants to go after the sand people, he wants adventure. Like, he has all these things. I think you can handle him playing with a toy because he's a kid and he just wants to get out of this farmer's life that he doesn't want at all. And he wants to go to the academy. Interesting.
Yeah, I think
Star Empire Academy instead of Starfleet Academy.
They do say the word Starfleet in this movie, and I was like, huh?
That's true. Yeah, the whole Starfleet. Yeah. But to be fair, he is a little whiny. But he's got to
little bit. But...
he's got to refuse the call. I'm too busy to Antifa. I got to go do some chores.
Well, then to me that shows his responsibility, because he says to his uncle, like, I don't want to go off in space, or I want to go off and like go to Starfleet or whatever. I don't want to farm. But then when an outside force is like, you gotta come with me. He's like, no, I gotta stick to my family and my responsibility.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to do. That is a cool thing to do.
Yeah, being responsible is cool. The Star Wars way.
Listen here, kids.
I was mentioning just camera moves and stuff before, and I just wanted to mention that there are a lot of great, like, kind of whip pans. Something that he would just never do again. Like in the prequels, the camera is just almost always stationary, but there's a lot of, like, cool camera movements that make the world, that convince you that it's real. Like when they I was going to say Enterprise, when the Millennium Falcon's about to leave Mos Eisley, and Han runs on board and he hits the button, shuts the door, and he's like, Chewie, get us out of here. He runs from the entryway along the hallway to where the cockpit is, and the camera, sort of whips and follows him the whole way. So we see that this is a real set. We get a sense of the architecture of the Falcon, and it also just feels, it feels kinetic. It feels like,
totally.
We're doing something here. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's weird to point out because it's just something that you should do. But again, the prequel is just all being so static. It's just so frustrating about how that got lost.
Yeah. I feel like, and even, I mean, obviously Empire is a classic or whatever, but watching this and, like, thinking about that stuff, it kept making me, like, in my mind just go towards, like, maybe this is the best Star Wars movie, because if you can watch it and, like, get taken back to that time, it's like, this is just like a movie. It's like a good movie. It's not Star Wars. It can, like, shake you out of that a little bit of, like, thinking about it in, like, the greater context and, like, the brand, and just being like, wow, this is just an awesome film on its own. And so that I don't know, rewatching it and then seeing all those interesting shots and, the choices they make, it kind of was, like, re-blowing my mind as an adult, Yeah,
the fact that this ranks, fairly low often on a lot of people's lists of, the top 9 Star Wars films is, it just puts me off lists.
It's bogus.
In general.
Bogus.
The idea of lists. Yeah. Boy, Harrison Ford.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier.
hard to I mean, good looking guy. Hard to see why, if somebody in 1977, you told them this guy's going to be the biggest movie star in the world for about 25 years, they'd be like, "What? What are you talking about? This guy?"
You weren't convinced?
I think he was told to be a cowboy. Do you know what I mean? I think everybody got, like, a thing. You got to be this. You got to be this. And he's the one guy who's not really being a space guy in this. And that works, but I don't think he fully was enthusiastic about what he was doing. I don't think he really knew what he was doing.
Okay. For me, it worked for me because he had such this like very, like, chill vibe a lot of the time.
Very laconic. Yeah.
Yeah, like in that first scene he's in where he's, like, doing the thing with his arm. He's got his arm up the air like he's just, like, lounging about and, like, his body's all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved it. I just loved how, like, his vibe was really
so many
chill.
of his vibe was great. So many of his lines though were, like, clearly, let's do another take. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Because he comes in and he sits down and Luke's messing with the remote or whatever, and he's like, I'll tell you one thing, I'm on one side of the galaxy that I haven't seen anything. It's like, all right, do we want to do that again? That was great. Let's keep that in a little more energy. Like, he's a little, he's not supposed to take it seriously. We get it. He definitely amps up as the film goes on, but it's almost like, are you taking this seriously?
Okay. I mean,
you're making me question the world now.
With what I know about him, like, that seems plausible, but...
He was Greg Proops, who of course was in Phantom Menace, knows a lot about Star Wars too, and he knows a lot of stories about the production. And he told a story about how there was a car from the studio, or maybe just a cab driver, that was supposed to take Ford to the set every day, and Ford was always high. He was always smoking marijuana the entire time. And one time he ran out of, like, rolling papers, like, in the hotel, and he didn't have time to get any more before his 7 a.m. call or whatever it was. So he boiled on the stove the pot that he had, and then he brought the pot with him into the car and was like lifting the lid and like trying to inhale the vapor out of the pot. Like, this is how the pot in the pot. This is how much he wanted to use this as a tool, I guess, for his performance.
I'm glad. I feel like he maintained that acting philosophy through various films, at least in Star Wars, because in the last one he was in there, he was barely there, I feel like.
I wonder if he has stock in the vaporizer technology.
Ooh, yeah, I think that would be very
just got a garbage bag filled up at his house every day. But that's cool. I got nothing against that. But
Sure.
He definitely comes off very relaxed for a lot of the film. Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, of course, I don't think she'd been in a ton of stuff before this, but I think that she is a revelation in this.
Yeah.
And of course, I think could have gone on. It did go on to something of an acting career, but of course was more into writing and screenwriting. And definitely a lot of her talents laid there. But yeah, she's just great in all of this as kind of the one woman who's got to represent females in the future, or at least in the past.
The other one died, so
yeah.
I did. But that really stuck out to me this time.
She's a great element to this, and of course, just of the sexual politics of the time, she also is relegated to kind of the love interest. But when women say, "Yeah, Princess Leia was like so cool," and she was like the girl who didn't have to be rescued. I mean, she literally has to be rescued because she's in this giant Death Star, but
yeah,
she's somebody who just like gets out there and is also taking care of business, and she rescues Han, and she's just a real inspiration to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think she does have some agency of her own in this movie too, in certain moments or whatever. Maybe as a whole, she still kind of fits into the tropes or whatever, but she comes off pretty cool a lot. It feels like after they rescue her, like she is part of the ride, like along for the ride. Like it doesn't feel like she is the escort, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and she knows stuff that the cool guy doesn't. So she's like a ruler. She's an opposition leader, and a Antifa fighter, I suppose, and she's got she knows the plans, and then Cowboy comes in and shoots everything up and tries to save her, and she's like, nice, this is great. This has got a great plan here. And gets him out of there, and then he's like, yeah, we're probably okay. She's like, I don't think we're okay. We're still in this. We got to hurry up and finish our part of the mission before anything else goes wrong. Yeah,
she's got they make a good like counterpoint, or really the three of them make a good trifecta.
Yeah. Another good sci-fi trifecta to rival Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, perhaps.
Oh sure. Yeah, I'd give it that. Who is who? No, I don't know.
Well,
I don't think that works. I think they're all so different. There's no none of them are Spock.
Yeah, I don't think that none of them are Spock.
You can have more than 3 types of characters, I guess.
Yeah. Leia might be the most Spock. Yeah, and then Solo might be the Kirk, although I hate to pair them up. And Luke, I think it doesn't make any sense, or it doesn't seem like it, but I think Luke would be the McCoy because Luke is really the heart of the trio.
Yeah, and he's kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing out here?
Let's just get drunk. Come on. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's so Luke.
There's so many iconic scenes in this, and it's the point where like I'm not bored in between the set pieces, but I'm waiting for the set pieces. I love the part when they put the disguises on and they're walking around the Death Star and they've got to get Chewie in the elevator, and they're like, this plan sucks. And then, it's funny, but the whole time I'm like, oh, I want to get to that detention block. I love that detention block scene where they're fighting the guys and they go down the the garbage chute, Flyboy.
The detention block is good. I do love when they're just walking around. Like I again just love how they went from so quickly from hanging out, want to go get power converters or whatever, to like you're on the Imperial base, so rapid fire, and it feels like such a such like an overwhelming task they have compared to, like the last Star Wars movie when they're like, yeah, let's go there, no problem.
Yeah, there's a billion. They got a billion ships. We got a billion ships. We're riding horses on the ships, and I mean, I guess being the last movie, you have to try to top everything that's ever come before, but it just doesn't seem as desperate and as personal as a bunch of ragtag quartet in a crappy ship that's been sucked into. It's not a moon. It's a space station. Like, the bad guys have all the power, all the technology. They've got a wicked laser knight, who's trying to kill everybody. There's the odds are stacked against them.
Yeah. That when the Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight was occurring, my friend who loves Star Wars, put what was happening in like the most. It's where you just describe something very literally, and just thinking about like what is occurring. This like, wizard who's lived on this sand planet in hiding for years is having a laser sword fight with. It's just like, God, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
He has a laser sword fight with his former pupil, who is now an evil space wizard cyborg. Yeah, crazy.
It's so sick. And like, because again, Star Wars has become so much part of the culture. Like, it's sometimes you forget about just how like raw and crazy some of these ideas are.
Yeah, and then getting away could be the end. The only part of the movie that feels kind of tacked on to me is like the last part, but it's almost like an encore. Like, you would never get rid of I think the last sequence is my favorite sequence, the Death Star sequence. Like, it's just, and I know it's cribbed directly from, World War II movies and Dam Busters or whatever it was that they were he was taking from, but just the idea of having these fighters attack. They have to destroy something specifically, and they're being fought by German or Japanese fighters, on all sides. It does seem weird to like have the climax of them getting away and then a short thing with a guy with a beard, and then here's another climax. But at the same time, it's just so well done. And it's so great. And then they take the time to put like a little bit of extra character stuff in there. So like Han gets what he wants and he's going to go away, and you're like, I thought that was a good guy. Like, why is he just leaving? But of course he's not leaving. He's going to come back.
Yeah, I like it. I think, you put it a good way. Like, a normal movie now would probably just end with them getting away. And then, it's the first movie, so we got a sequel coming. This, really, I mean, they could have made no more Star Wars movies after this.
Yeah,
it would have worked. It would have been fine.
Almost kind of wish that they hadn't, but yeah.
Yeah, same.
Lucas, like, I know that that much money will and laud and honor will change a person, and Lucas created Star Wars, and then over the course of a couple of years became its biggest fan, but in all the worst ways.
Yeah.
Like, it became, instead of a place for him to just stretch his imagination and deliver amazing things, like, you think about the people online who are like, that skeleton that C-3PO is standing by in the desert is the skeleton of a great dragon, and a great dragon is, there's a entry on Wikipedia, the Star Wars wiki, for hell, because in Empire Strikes Back, Han Solo tells somebody to go to hell, and instead of it just being an expression, they have to explain what hell could be in the Star Wars galaxy, and it's just like, at that point, just do something else. Just do something else with your life.
Yeah.
And Lucas kind of became, he could have done something crazy with the prequels, but instead he just kind of became like the biggest editor of Wikipedia in the
world. Yeah, there's something, I don't know, it like, maybe just because I watched those when I was young and I went through a phase of like hating them, but now I'm back on board. Like, they're terrible, but I love them, so. But yeah, it's in the greater context of George Lucas, it is like, because I do feel like he can do some genius work. I would have loved to see like, what his post Star Wars could have been.
Yeah, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, achievements of Star Wars is creating this world that is completely strange and alien to us, and so detailed, but not over-explained. In the first movie, you could never have this in 8 successive movies because at this point we become Wikipedia familiar with the universe. But they're like, even if we don't understand the stakes, we understand them. You know, like that last scene where the Death Star is rounding the planet and we've got a countdown. It's going to blow up where all of our good guys are if they don't stop it. You know, even if we don't know what a Death Star is, or we don't understand like how it works or what planet it is or who that alien is, we still understand what's going on here. And that's just, I love that sense of like being in this strange world, and I don't quite get it, but I get it.
Yeah, that's what I sort of felt when I was saying earlier about like partially don't know what the movie is about, like on its face value or its surface, like with the Force, for example. Like, I just kind of love, though, not fully knowing what the deal is with like the Force, or, you know, like that you can kind of draw your own conclusions if you want, or I guess, I don't know, people always dog on the lightsaber fight in this movie too, but I think it's awesome. I think it's great that this is you only get it a little bit, you know what I mean? Like before they go off the rails with it a little bit. Like I love the mystery of it. I like a mix, you know, of stuff, but I love this where it's like you only get a taste of like this thing that existed in the past, and it's these two now old men, you know, who are just like shadows of what they once were.
Yeah, it's a malnourished desert dwelling 60-year-old versus a 40-year-old who's lost 3 of his limbs, you know, and his lungs. So how fast is that fight going to be? But of course, the myth of Darth Vader means that he has to go Rogue One on everybody now. So.
Right. I go back and forth on it. Like, I sometimes love like a game, you know, where you play as a Jedi and you're just like total badass and you're, you know, doing all these cool moves. But then when I go back and watch this, I always appreciate the restraint almost with that when this is a movie that doesn't have a lot of restraint, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I really like that last scene between Han and Luke where they have gone through all this stuff and they're still sort of clinging to their personal philosophies, you know? And he's the idealistic Luke is convinced that Han would, you know, be changed by their experiences. And he's like, I got this money. I'm going to go spend this money. Also, by the way, I'm saving my life because a giant slug wants to kill me if I don't give him all this money. I'm not even making a profit on this. And he's like, well, you take care of yourself, Han. Guess that's what you're best at. And I like it when, you know, he's like, you know, hey, Luke, you know, may the Force be with you. But what if in that moment he's like, hey, Luke, fuck you. And that's the end of that.
That could just be the end of the entire like series there too. I love that.
Anything else you can think of to say? We've said a lot about Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I think we did good because I was sort of like, what do you say about the movie that's been said before? But then I guess I realized like you can just talk about like the last set of discourse about the movie itself. Like it's always just gonna be happening, you know?
Yeah, watching the special edition and seeing, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the ships, TIE fighters and X-Wings are replaced with CGI. Is really frustrating because they worked so hard on that last sequence, and it's so impressive, and has always been impressive. Even in the practical effects, it's just really amazing. And I liked when the Force was something that was just kind of weird. You didn't really know how it worked. And it wasn't a bunch of guys, you know, running fast and force pushing. But I like when Vader has eliminated everybody else. And as Luke is getting ready to do his thing and he's sort of communing with Obi-Wan, you know, Vader is like, this Force is strong with this one. Oh, well, time to kill him. You know, it's sort of like a game recognized game moment, but I'm still going to kill you.
I love when they're just like Obi-Wan and Vader are like wandering around the Death Star, like feeling each other's vibes.
Right. Yeah. He's trying to shut the thing down, but he's kind of got his lightsaber out because he doesn't know if he's going to come around the corner and, you know, bingo, here's Anakin Skywalker.
Amazing. It's good. That's so good.
Well, I think we've said just about everything we can, and we should probably wrap it up. I will mention that they added for the special edition something known as a praxis ring to the Death Star explosion. A praxis ring, of course, popularized in the 1991 movie the undiscovered country, Star Trek VI, in the explosion of Praxis at the beginning of the movie. So take that. They're always cross-pollinating each other. And we'll be back to talk about more of that after this word from our sponsor. Back with more BackTrekking. How would you describe Just Enough Trope? We are the Just Enough Trope podcast. I'm your host, Caliban, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
Oh no, does this mean they can hear all the things I yell at the TV during Downton Abbey?
Why did you do that?
How do you plead?
Let the game begin.
Yeah, check these fresh moves.
Oh!
Don't shoot man in face.
This isn't the Save Gotham fundraiser.
It's the Chill Family Reunion.
Master Yoda assigned a Padawan to this bold Jedi.
I think it's pronounced Padawan.
Oh, Padawan, excuse me.
Hey, it's getting late. I think Ralph's going to want his motorcycle back.
Go jerk off the pictures of Jean Grey.
I am freaking getting old.
Yeah, I noticed the life clock was blinking in your hand.
Get out of here, Wilson. Go fight the Teen Titans or something.
I'm unkillable, not unwoundable.
You like Sailor Moon, right? Why don't you sail on his
Oh, wow.
Just Enough Trope. News, reviews, and geek fondue. Every Monday on the Just Enough Trope podcast network.
Loving me never have a say. You so sorry.
What?
Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. If you like Star Wars, thank a Trekkie, because, of course, Star Trek, after its release in 1966, had a similar, if more subtle, effect on culture as Star Wars did. Where Star Wars films are released intermittently and are designed to thrill in short bursts, Trek's goal was only ever to be there week by week, inspiring the imaginations and aspirations of its audience and asking difficult questions about the world we live in. The show's seemingly limited appeal and a series of shakeups behind the scenes meant that Trek in its initial incarnation would only be on TV for 3 years, but the impression it left was a lasting one, giving rise to fan clubs, fanfics, and the birth of what we now know as the fan convention. With the runaway success of Star Wars in 1977, the already in action plans to revive Trek as a series or film were given the go-ahead, leading to the 1979 Robert Wise directed feature, Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
The human adventure is just beginning. William Shatner, take us out, is Captain James T. Kirk. Leonard Nimoy is Mr. Spock. DeForest Kelley is Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy. James Doohan is Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott. George Takei is Lieutenant Commander Sulu. Majel Barrett is Dr. Christine Shattle. Walter Koenig is Lieutenant Pavel Chekhov. Nichelle Nichols is Lieutenant Commander Uhura. Stephen Collins is Commander Willard Decker. Persis Kambata is Lieutenant Ilia. Star Trek, the motion picture. Gene Roddenberry's production of a Robert Wise film.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture begins not like Star Wars, thankfully.
No.
And it might have been a good idea for it to open with a little more energy, but it definitely opens in a similar milieu or mise-en-scène of where are we? What is going on exactly?
Big ship.
Yeah, big cloud,
Yeah.
big ships. Yeah, what is happening? And it features, I think, something that would kind of persist into the other Star Trek films, but not really, which was that idea of a lumpy, sort of dirty future. You know, you're always going to have the optimism and utopia of a Starfleet and a Federation future, but we open with the Klingons, you know, and they're kind of knobbly ships, that same sort of gray, random things stuck on them.
Yeah.
Sort of tech look.
Even like the uniforms, like the Starfleet uniforms in this, like I kind of felt like is that Star Wars influence there too, because it's more of like muted color palette there.
Yeah, the future is brown for a lot of this. I also love the fact that whoever designed the Klingon bridge for Star Trek The Motion Picture, they've used that design for over 40 years now. It's just that central chair, weird pillars on the sides, guy standing in the back.
I mean, if it ain't broke, you know what I mean?
I guess so.
That kind of is just like in Star Trek too. It's like we always kind of mine the depths of different aspects of human culture, but when it comes to like other aliens, sometimes it's just like, yeah, the Klingons are sort of a, you know,
it's a monoculture. Yeah,
they're all the same. You know,
yeah.
Sometimes we break from that, you know, or like we have our Worf character, you know, or something, but
yeah.
We don't get to see, you know, like the different types of music, you know. We just Klingon opera is all they like, you know. All that
yeah.
stuff.
I mean, I don't mean to cut to the chase like immediately, but that's always been, I think, the big difference between Star Wars and Star Trek is that Star Trek is able to, week after week, continue to give new depth to everything they do. They have to. They've got to put something on this week. And Star Trek, or Star Wars, gives you a film and some impressions. The more films you have, the more you can play with it. But it wasn't until, like, books and Star Wars TV shows that we really got to give a lot of detail to what we've got. So if you see a Twi'lek in a Star Wars movie, you know, okay, these guys are like the Ferengi of Star Wars. They're evil and greedy. But then, you know, when you get books and extra stuff, you go, oh no, there's like noble Twi'lek Jedi, and it's a whole culture and thing.
This kind of ties into what you were asking earlier about like what is Star Wars about, and I sort of said like it and Star Trek kind of give me a similar feeling, but it's because in different ways. Because when I watch Star Wars, it's like, yeah, again, it's kind of very straightforward, but like, you know, what is beyond this world? They've like what's beneath the surface is so intriguing, but they never give it to you. Where like Star Trek has me thinking about like the world beyond myself. But it, you know, in a much bigger way, you know, where it's like questions about like humanity that I can't even comprehend, you know, like
yeah,
it's just so thought provoking. They're both thought provoking, but in very different ways, you know. One, I'm like, what's the lore? You know, what's the lore of Star Wars? And Star Trek is like, who am I?
Yeah. Star Wars is like, it's good to be spiritual. We got hyperdrives, but, you know, maybe meditate once in a while. Yeah. But Star Trek is just diving into every single thing. Is Star Trek the Motion Picture the only movie that designates itself as the motion picture? If you Google,
I was thinking about that.
If you Google the motion picture, just, you know, no quotes, you get Star Trek the Motion Picture.
There's definitely the movie that has happened.
Yeah, Trolls the movie or Smurfs the movie. Yeah.
There's something. Maybe it's because this is like it's like prestige here, you know.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's the motion picture. Yeah,
I don't know why they don't do that more. Like Ninja Turtles, the motion picture.
I think they did. Isn't that the subtitle of the TMNT first movie?
Is it?
It might be. Or well, there's like Batman the movie. It's like, well, we didn't think it was a comic book. But, yeah.
You know what a good one is Pokemon, the first movie.
The first movie. I know. So presumptuous. Yeah.
They were right.
They were right, but yeah, still. Yeah. Just call it like, you know, Mewtwo's Revenge or something like that.
Star Trek the motion picture is like, it's almost like...
They leave themselves open for the joke, which is like, you know, Star Trek the motionless picture.
Yeah, that's what people say, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's like this movie, though, is them like laying it all out on the table. Like, here we go. We made the motion picture, you know, like it's the opposite of calling it the first movie.
Yeah, and this I think this was probably a huge jump for the franchise, which at this point, you know, remember, was not really a franchise. It was one TV show. But both for the creators and the fans, to see this franchise come back to something that had been done before and really dig into it. The whole point of 60s TV is nothing changes but the cast if we don't make the contract negotiations, you know? And instead we're coming back and we're seeing Kirk didn't keep going out there. He took a desk job, and Spock said, yeah, F being a human, I'm going to just be a Vulcan. And McCoy went to a disco, and the whole world changed out from under us. We're not just going to come back and see people in red and gold and just cruising out in space.
It's kind of incredible, and it's like, because of that too, it feels like the most like standalone Star Trek thing ever made. I feel like.
I agree with you, but I also, as I was watching this, was thinking this is very different than other Star Trek films, but I think all the nuts and bolts of what would be all of the TOS movies is still here.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not the whale one, but just there's a scene where they first get to, the cloud, the V'ger cloud, and it shoots its, death ball at them. And Spock's like, okay, I think we can figure out the translation matrix and send a signal. Yeah. And the moment goes on for way too long, but Kirk's like, Spock, transmit the signal. Like Spock waiting,
yes.
Kirk waiting for Spock to do something desperately is something that's in like all the films.
Yeah, there's definitely like a blueprint there too, or just like they did this in the original series too, but they're like the way they're like gonna mine the depths of these characters a little bit more feels like it like went into overdrive with this movie, and then further on after this.
And Trek has never had a problem. Welcome to BackTrekking. Trek's never had a problem of stealing with it from itself or stealing from other franchises. I think everybody knows by now that, they were kicking around since the early 70s doing a feature film or trying to bring Trek back to TV. And of course, they developed Star Trek Phase 2, which was going to be a sequel series to Star Trek, the original series, featuring Decker and Ilea, a character named Zahn, which would be sort of their Spock replacement. The actor David Gautreau was going to play Zahn, and he cameos as the guy in charge of the radio telescope facility that we see in the beginning of the film.
Oh.
A lot of those ideas were recycled into Star Trek The Next Generation. So, Decker is Riker, Ilea becomes Troy.
Oh, it's so obvious, too.
Yeah. And other elements. So, yeah, that's all kind of there, I think, from the inception.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's like laying the groundwork for like, all of Star Trek in this one movie.
There's boy, I always have to give props to Leonard Nimoy, a guy who, I don't know, we've seen a lot of Nimoy on this show, haven't we?
Yeah.
And you get to think of him as being Spock, that is a guy who is very reserved and every once in a while cries mathematically, when the script demands it. And then you see something like Body Snatchers, and it's like, hey, I'm just a cool psychiatrist. Wears a glove, and also I'm an alien. Yeah. And he really turns it up, I think, in this film. Everything in this film could be described as subtle, but his portrayal of Spock as being completely emotionless, an emotionless robot, and then coming on board the Enterprise because he needs to connect with Voyager, and almost like self-consciously, like you could be a robot and still have a conversation, but he's like distancing himself, I think, intentionally from his friends because he doesn't want his emotions to come back. And then finally mind melding and connecting with V'ger and coming back and realizing, almost getting his emotions back because he realizes that V'ger is, what he could be is this thing without emotion that's just pure drive and curiosity. And that's not how he wants to be. Like that's a great arc.
Yeah. It's, I feel like you don't see Spock quite in this way in any other thing, and this might be one of my favorite portrayals of the character in all of Star Trek, I guess. When
we think of like Spock near the end of his life, when we see him in the Kelvinverse movies, this Spock's been turned off and turned on again a couple times.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Totally.
like he became a Kolinar robot, kind of came back from that. Then he, sacrificed his life, and they had to kind of reboot him, like from the original drive for Star Trek 4.
Right.
Then he kind of becomes another guy again. Then he becomes, unfortunately, even more distant from his father and becomes like the Romulus guy, like he's going to get these guys together. Then he goes to another universe and meets like a new him and Kirk. So he's been through quite a lot.
Yeah, I love his arc. I love by the time you get to him in Next Gen, he's just like I don't even care anymore. You know, like he's always kind of been like, even in this, he's like, I'm going on my own mission. You know what I mean? Like, that's always been him, I guess. But like, you know, I don't know. I love this. I feel like this movie especially starts that.
Speaking of subtle, William Shatner does, I think, I don't know. He's like Nick Cage. I like him when he's going nuts, but like he does some of his best, like subtle acting work in this. When everybody makes fun of the Enterprise sequence where they're flying around the ship, which I timed it, and it's only like 4 minutes and 48 seconds long.
Holy cow!
That's not that long. Come on. But just the emotion that you feel from him when he sees the ship, you understand that we're not in the full on, I'm getting old, Wrath of Khan part yet, but like we get that he misses the adventures and he knows that he's going to do something bad here that he would never want done to himself, which is he's going to take somebody's ship away from them. And he feels conflicted about that, and he gets yelled at a little bit by Bones about that. But you can see all those emotions on his face. He's always been, I know he's known as a TV actor, but he's always been, I think, a good film actor in that you can push the camera into him and he can show you all those things at the same time. When they have the transporter accident,
oh yeah,
you know, and everybody and the people die or whatever, like you can see him being mad and sad and wanting to throw up like all at the same time, like in his eyes. And I think that's he never gets the credit I think he deserves. And he probably overly demands for being a good actor.
There are so many amazing moments in this that are just like him and Decker like looking at each other.
Yeah.
Quietly.
Who you know, we were talking about Chris Benoit before, separating the part or the actor from the person, also does a pretty good job in this in being, you know, idealistic and being determined, and also having this horrible thing happen, which is like, you took my whole ship away, and now you're going to ask me because the other Vulcan guy melted. Now I have to go on the mission too? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then also like my ex-girlfriend is here and is sort of having to deal with all this stuff, and yet still being a guy who's going to say, hey, you're doing this wrong. You want to shoot the phasers and that's not going to work. We got to shoot these torpedoes, and you're not going to like me telling you what to do, but I'm going to do it. And that transmits to Riker in that Picard hires him because he's a guy who like yelled at his CO, you know, for I always kind of wonder about Riker. Like he's a guy who like Picard picked him because, you know, he told the CO that like he was going to beam down to the planet and he wouldn't let him beam down to the planet. And then we never see that from him at all in the rest of like TNG. Like he never really like countermands any of Picard's decisions. He never fights back against anything. Was he just having a bad day that day? It's just like, you know, that he took the last of the coffee or something and he was kind of mad at his CEO. And then Picard's like, I want that guy. He's got fire. I want him on my ship.
Yeah, they kind of change him to just like, he's a co-captain, like, you know, there's so many, like, some of the great episodes are just, like, Riker's in charge now.
Yeah. He's no Kira, who's, like, literally diametrically and ideologically opposed to this commander coming in and taking her station away from her.
I think that fell away from Picard, though, too, because I feel like they start him off as so, like, gruff and, like...
Oh, he becomes everybody's grandpa, yeah.
Yeah, so that's... I mean, I think it was maybe a choice for the better for what Next Gen is, but...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that we never really see that characteristic come out again.
The plot of the movie is very simple, and it's kind of funny because we just watched Apocalypse Now, which is, you know, one of the most famous internal journeys in film. And I thought, is this the same? They're kind of journeying into something, but they're also journeying into the human mind and spirit, and they're thinking about their roles in this. And of course, it has a much better and happier ending, but I couldn't help but see some parallels.
Yes, it is. And it is like this, like there are times where they're just like floating down the river, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when they get inside the cloud, and it is just like that, it has that same like slow but tense feeling of like, what is actually at the end of this tunnel we're going down.
And what's in there is amazing effects, you know, just thinking about the fact that this was all done practically. There's no computers. This is all filmic techniques. There's, comping things together and stuff like that. But the weird vistas of the interior of whatever it is, whatever this amalgamation of technology is that's around V'ger, and the orifices, the opening and closing, like pulsing orifices and things like that. It's just like,
right.
It's I've never done acid, but this would be like an acid trip movie.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's breathtaking for sure.
And it's also just exactly what they're supposed to be doing. I know they're defending Earth. A lot of the TOS movies are them defending something that's coming to Earth, but it's literally exploration. Like, this is what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be out there gobsmacked by whatever it is they're discovering and touching, seeking out new life.
Yeah, it is like. I love that it's not a battle at all. It is like they consider like we gotta fight this thing, but like so much of it is just like Kirk going like, no, we've got to go deeper, and then being like, oh, we don't know, it's like, you don't know that you wouldn't instantly be killed, and he's just like, we gotta go deeper. We just gotta keep flying into it, and so most of the movie is just them continuing to fly towards it or into it,
Yeah, Spock kind of goes rogue in this one a little bit.
He flies further into it.
Yeah, and I want a definitely Oscar nomination for a mustached guy that gets neck pinched by Spock. That's
so good.
Half turned to the camera like, ooh, and then he goes down. But yeah, and what's special about it, or what's significant, I think, is that we're literally encountering ourselves. We're seeing ourselves. We're seeing a probe that we sent out, Earth sent out, that has basically lapped the universe and come back to us.
Yeah, I love that. Like, that's the mystery too, is that it is like just a reflection the whole time.
Yeah, the fact that we have sent this thing out and it comes back to us is a little bit self-congratulatory, but then also it is host now to this machine consciousness, which is kind of like unknowable and is not just some bug on another planet that we haven't discovered. Like, this is like a new form of life and intelligence. It's exactly what Starfleet is supposed to be doing. Gene Roddenberry, even though he kept pitching that episode where Kirk saves JFK from being killed, had a couple good ideas, and this is one that he also kept pitching. It was originally called The God Thing, and yeah, the idea is that we would run into this thing. His original pitch had a lot more criticisms of religion in it, which I think were smartly stripped out for the film. But
yeah,
he wanted this thing to. It's very godlike in the film, but also sort of take on like the form. I think Kirk is supposed to fight Jesus like on the bridge at some point.
Oh God! Seriously?
Yeah, check out the Memory Alpha page for the God thing. There's a lot of weird ideas.
We gotta do an episode about that. I feel
in that original pitch. Yeah, we'll just read the script if we can get our hands on
it. Yeah, no, I like that. This is because this movie, in a way, it's like absolutely spiritual, like in a kind of unknowable way that like Star Wars was in moments. But like, I like that it's like a lowercase g God, you know what I mean? It's like the human experience as opposed to, the higher power or whatever. The higher power is your mind, man.
Yeah, it's in your mind. Ilya, played by Persis Khambatta, gets kind of boned in this story because she's just basically doing her job, and she perishes, as many TOS officers do who are not recurring actors. But she does come back as a super strong robot, which is kind of cool.
It's pretty cool. It's and she is like, looks really cool. It's such a good visual, like she looks like the cover of a science fiction novel.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah.
And she she's literally a probe that they've sent. So she's, we send machines out, and they've sent a human looking machine to talk to us. And the key to connecting with them is, to teach her emotions, of course. So I love the fact that they put that headdress kind of thing on her. That's what starts it all off. It's like, wear this thing, Baldy. Oh, yes. Oh, Deckard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like weird because it's cool though. They like
wear this Yankees cap. Yeah.
Remember this? Yeah, they like tie her character and her, like Decker's got his whole thing too with it. I don't know, it's weird. It's like there's a lot of things going on with this. I'll say is it like in the moment of watching it was a little hard to wrap my head around. And I think why like my first initial times watching this movie I didn't like it as much was I was very confused, whereas like this time I kind of welcomed it all,
Mm-hmm. There's a lot that was kind of stripped out of this. I could have sworn that there was some deleted scenes or something, or maybe I'm just making it up, but her race, the Deltons, their background is, say it with me, Gene Roddenberry is a perv. They're so good at sex that they have to take a vow of celibacy so they don't freak everybody out, which is weird. Apparently, one early version of the script had Spock facing a Klingon nemesis who would be played by Toshiro Mifune, which is okay, well, how do I get to that timeline? I want to see that.
They're just so good at sex.
Toshiro Mifune is so good at sex. That's what I want to see. Yeah,
I love that concept is so ridiculous. I love it. I like my vow of celibacy is on the record.
Yeah, it's on the record. I've got it tattooed on me. Yeah, it's weird.
I wish they had more time to get to that.
Yeah, or the apparently samurai sword fight with Toshiro Mifune too.
Yeah, no, I wish they got to that for sure.
He was another guy who, he did a ton of he was huge, of course, in Japan, and then when those movies came over here, his legend grew, and I feel like he was supposed to be in a lot of cool American movies and stuff that just never worked out. Like he ended up playing, I think he played Hirohito or just one of the Japanese officials in World War II 3 times in World War II movies, because Hollywood just had no idea what to do with him. They still don't know what to do with Asian actors, but they took somebody as great as him and just wasted him.
Yeah, that I guess. I mean, that's
he would have been a great Trek villain.
Oh, sure,
or a great Trek hero.
Yeah, sure.
Thank God we've got Michelle Yeoh now.
Oh yeah. I guess that's she's killing it with that. Yeah, I feel like just get someone with a lot of charisma. But yeah, I guess our imagination over here, Hollywood's imagination is we like to make a lot of World War II movies.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. The war ended 10 years ago, still making them. Yeah. So a couple things. There's a lot of unanswered questions from this, I think. You've got this apparent machine intelligence race it's either in another dimension or in a distant part of the galaxy that I don't think we ever follow up on. They're probably in a book or something like that, but I'd like to see more of them. And they soup up the Voyager 6. So Voyager 6's entire thing is collect information. And they're like, you want to collect information? Now you will collect the most information. So they give it all this apparatus to let it learn everything.
Really helpful guys,
Yeah, it's like if they'd found a Roomba, it's you will now clean the entire universe. Just send it out there. And it comes back, and it's one of my pet peeves about Star Trek is that we always meet these amazing aliens, find these amazing technologies and cultures, and they always say there's going to be a cultural exchange, and we never see anything. And so if V'ger gathered all the data in the universe, and its whole goal is, at the end, it transmits it to Earth, right? TNG should just be super beings just beaming all over the universe and going to other dimensions and stuff, right? If we've got 80 years later, we've got all that information that V'ger gave us, it should just be a whole new ballgame.
I guess there's got to be a in-between story where, what happened to the information?
It was Betamax and we were VHS.
Yeah. Well, maybe they transmitted it had to be through radio, right? Was that the thing?
It was really slow. They're still hundreds of years later. They're still trying to get all the information down. Kind of like how I'm backing up my 2 terabyte hard drive, because of my computer went down.
Right.
And I've been doing it for about 15 hours now. It says I've got about 20 hours left. So.
See, now, yeah, imagine
Think
that,
how
but
bad
all
it would be.
its collective information in the universe.
All the information in the universe.
Maybe it never picked up anything that good.
It's all just, Hydrogen. Yep. There's just like nothing to see.
There's a lot of nothing out there, you know?
Yeah. Shut down the space fleet. Forget about it. Yeah. Did we, I don't know if we did a definitive look at Star Trek The Motion Picture, but what do you think?
Oh, I thought this watching of it raised its stock in my eyes, I think. Like, I think I appreciated a lot more about it than I did the last time, where I thought, yeah, you could like cut out the where they're flying around the Enterprise, or you could cut out when they're flying around. You could probably cut that out, but you know, like, just like, I appreciated a lot of that stuff this time because, I don't know, I just like I didn't fully come out of it with like a specific, you know, like answer to some of these thought-provoking questions, but I just like that it got me thinking outside of myself, and you know, and like thinking about humanity and the world and stuff like that. So it's a bit more out there in terms of the philosophy it's covering, but I just sort of love that, similar to like with Star Wars, how I kind of love how you know, it's not like just like this perfect solid thing, you know.
It's certainly of its time, and it's certainly something that is unique to its time, because I don't think you could even make this now. I mean, you can make a Star Wars now, and you can argue that it's not as good as the 70s ones, but they're, you know, in a lot of ways essentially the same, and you just couldn't, this movie wouldn't exist. This movie, 2001 has a lot of similarities to this movie, I think. You just couldn't make those now.
Yeah, you know, it's wild to think about this as like, if it was like, okay, Star Wars was successful, like let's make a movie that'll appeal to people, because like really there's nothing, like, it's not this action-packed adventure. It's like literally it's more similar to Apocalypse Now.
Man, kind of regret bringing that up now.
I'm sorry. Well, it just, you know what I mean though. It's like kind of it's a slow burn as opposed to, you know, this Yahoo.
Yeah. And I don't want to indict American movie-going audiences, but people will always be down for an easily digestible adventure story, and not everybody will always be down to sit and like have to think about.
Right.
That's tough. It's like horror movies. Like, people will always watch a movie where a doll scares people. I don't know what happens in Annabelle. But like something like The Witch, which asks you to like ask questions about like, well, who is good and who is bad and what's going on here.
It's weird to me though that was like the choice they made. Like, this if you would have told me that like 2001 A Space Odyssey was the most popular movie of all time, so they were like, let's make a movie with Star Trek characters, like that's what this seems like, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like Wrath of Khan, you know, feels more like, let's get some of that Star Wars money.
Yeah, they certainly, I think if they were trying to do a Star Wars, they definitely got it a lot more right on the second one, for sure. But that is a conversation for another day.
Certainly.
Let's talk about technology. Trek is Trek because of technology, and I think in a lot of ways Star Wars is the same. And technology often facilitates what the characters are doing, but often gets in the way just as much. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies, and we add what we get to the non-Trek media and subtract it from the Trek episode, or in this case movie, and see how each would be different. It's our technological exchange, and this is going to be a rough one, but I think there are a lot of equivalents to technology in the Star Wars universe to the Star Trek universe, so we'll see what we get. Here's our list of Star Trek technologies. We've got phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And let's see what we get on our random selecting number device. We've got a number 8, which is shields, and I think this is a good pick for once, because they don't talk too much about shields in Star Wars. They do have deflectors and that sort of thing. What if you took shields away from Star Wars? What would happen?
Oh,
No, sorry. What if we added shields to Star Wars? What would happen?
Oh yeah, I guess I never really. Star Wars doesn't even really ask you to think about that. I mean, I'm sure there's technical manuals, right, and stuff that have over-explained all of this stuff.
Yeah, I can shortly over-explain. There are energy shields and particle shields in Star Wars, which is like, one resists energy weapons and the other resists, say, physical impacts. So when the Millennium Falcon is flying through an asteroid field, it's not using like its Star Trek shields. It's using like a different kind of shield. So, because clearly if you're moving at close to the speed of light and an asteroid hits you, game over. But they have shielding, which can keep the ship, together, like their structural integrity fields on Star Trek. So if you gave like TIE fighters full-on Star Trek shields, you shield the exhaust port on the Death Star. Darth Vader, encases himself in a Star Trek, shield during his laser sword fight. How would it be different? Well,
I mean, I guess you get rid of the whole criticism people have about the whole like exhaust port thing. You could just like I mean that seems like
an exhaust permeable shield around the port. Yeah.
Seems like something George Lucas would like add to it later, you know what I mean? Or like they'd make a whole movie like I guess they made Rogue One to kind of explain that like why didn't Mads Mikkelsen design a shield or something?
We don't have to talk about Rogue One. I think that you would cut down on the excitement of the final scene because you would lose the sense of fatality. If every X-Wing, and X-Wings have shields in the lore of Star Wars, but if they all had like durable shields which would go down by a certain number of percentage points, thank you Tuvok, until eventually the ship is vulnerable, you would lose that idea of we're being picked off one by one. And every successive trench run they get more information about what, because they don't really understand their objective. They go in and they are wiped out by fighters, and then they go in and they're like, no, we have to shoot very accurately, otherwise this isn't going to work, until we get down to just essentially one fighter, which is Luke, and they're all taken out just by lasers from other craft, but if they've all got shields, they're all just going to be bumping off of each other, absorbing shots, trying again. The Death Star run could have gone on forever.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me.
Or at least until Yavin 4 is in sight and gets blown up.
It's also, too, just this happens in Star Trek still, but I was thinking back to some episode we were talking about sometimes, like, phaser deaths seems like kind of like they desensitize you a little bit to the death because it's not as gruesome, Like, there's something horrifying about, watching these guys explode or get their hands chopped off or whatever else,
Yeah, it's unsanitized. That's a great point. I saw I was watching a Voyager episode the other day called Memorial, and in it the Voyager crew is forced to relive like this massacre that happened by an alien probe. It doesn't matter. But the point is, in one scene of this massacre, because all this stuff really happened, there's a guy who's going through and he's using his phaser or his energy weapon to incinerate or disintegrate all the bodies that are left from the massacre.
Oh, yeah.
And Janeway's like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? He's like, hey, no bodies, no crime, which is chilling. But it makes me think of, we see a lot of people die in Star Trek and just go, whoop, and they just kind of disappear because they're evaporated. Like, would that complicate murder trials? Would that complicate investigations in the future? Like, if you kill somebody and there is no body, in our current legal system, you can't really convict somebody of murder generally if there is no body.
Yeah, it's that, I guess. It seems like, I guess what I said, desensitizing, but then it's like more horrifying to think about.
Yeah, it could be even more horrifying. Yeah.
At least with Star Wars, there's hands all over the place,
Yeah, right. Other than that, I think it would just, you would lose a lot of the desperation and excitement of the ship-to-ship battles. The Millennium Falcon is set upon by 4 TIE fighters, and it's outnumbered, but it's got to destroy these ships before it's destroyed. And if it's got more time because it's got heavy shields, and Luke can't yell, I got it, because he shoots a TIE fighter and the shields just absorb his blast, and the battle just goes on and on.
Yeah.
You lose a lot of the spontaneity of the conflicts.
There's something about the original trilogy. There's something like more analog about it, Like when I think of shields in Star Wars, I think of in more like the Star Trek way. I think of like the Gungan shields or something, you know, like.
Oh yeah, they do have those shields in Star Wars, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah. They took those out. A lot of more Gungans would have gone
and the
down.
destroyer droids have shields, and yeah.
That's way more of a prequel thing.
That's weird that it's goes back in time, but they increased the technology there.
Well, that's just, the analog trash world they live in.
Well, they're losing the inspiration of the World War II movies that they were originally based on. The tail gunner scene, where the planes are coming in and the guy in the ball turret has to take out the attacking fighters, so they can drop the bombs. And that
totally.
Sort of yeah. Well, I think it would be a worse place with shields. What about the Star Trek universe? If we took shields away from the motion picture, then what?
There's shield stuff going on here, right?
There's something specific I can think of, which is we see this energy ball from V'ger destroy everything it comes across. And then later we learn that it isn't quite destroying it. It's kind of integrating it into its own structure. They're flying through the cloud at one point and they see the array, or what seems like, an extrapolation of the array that was hit by this energy thing within Voyager itself. Man, I bet the novelization for this is great, right? You just get more detail.
Oh, sure.
The Alan Dean Foster novelization. But they do mention when the Enterprise encounters that weapon, it gets hit. And Sulu's like, all right, our new screens are holding. So they've got some kind of new updated technology that, keeps them just ahead of destruction or absorption by Voyager. But they wouldn't have that, baby.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I can see that working out there. I mean, shields are, what can you do about shields,
It's also, boy, this is tougher than I thought. It's also sort of, you get the idea that there's a kind of semaphore or a kind of unspoken language in starship interaction that is never fully addressed or directly addressed in Star Trek, but is still there. So you meet another ship. There are certain codes for conduct codes for how you interact with them. That's exploited in Wrath of Khan, where the Khan-controlled Reliant meets the Enterprise, and they don't want to talk to him because they know they'll be given away right away. But the longer they go without talking to them, Enterprise starts to realize, all right, something's wrong here. Like they've been taken over or something like that.
Their etiquette.
So there's things, there's things like that. Also, if you meet a ship and you charge your weapons and throw your shields up right away, the other ship's like, whoa, hey, what's going on here? Like we just want to talk. So yeah. Kirk does say specifically, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to scan them. We don't want to do anything to appear hostile.
Oh yeah.
This is all sophistry because if they didn't have shields, they couldn't raise them anyway.
It actually is kind of subtle how pervasive shields are. Like I was just watching some random, like Deep Space Nine episode last night, and it's like it had that where it's like, what's going on with these guys?
They got their shields up.
Yeah, they just put their shields up, and it's like, oh shit, like
fuck, it's going down. I wish somebody, not Rick Berman or somebody, would just come out and explain how they decided shields work, because otherwise we've just got like Fanon to go on. And Voyager, I don't think they wanted to piss anybody off, but Voyager found itself in a lot of situations where they had an exciting sort of conclusion to the episode and it required us to beam somebody out at the last second. But a long time ago we established that you can't beam people when you've got the shields up. And Voyager's in this pitched battle and they're going to snatch somebody, beam them off of another ship and then fly away. And there's just no way you could do that. You'd have to drop your shields and you'd be instantly destroyed. So I wish that they would say, no, you can't beam through somebody else's shields. You can set your transporter to a frequency that matches your shields. And so you can beam that way, or just tell us what the rock, paper, scissors rules are.
Yeah.
Because the nerd in me goes, had their shields up, you just beamed them back, but whatever.
It sets a bad precedent when you get to, like, I feel like by the time we're in Discovery, it's like they're like beaming all over the place. And
yeah, although Discovery's been pretty good about that from a technical standpoint. The Wounded, an episode that we talked about, is actually talked about recently. I guess I keep going back to Nam. Cheats on that because they say, they need to beam O'Brien aboard a Federation ship. Its shields are up because, the captain's ready for battle. But they establish that he's been standing in that transporter room for a reason for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, he is a transporter chief. He understands how the transporters work. He's able to, beam through the gap in the shield generators or whatever because it's a Federation ship and he understands the specs. So for this one time, this will work. And I can get on this guy's ship even though I should not be there at all and sing the Minstrel Boy song with him. And that's fine. And I don't think they ever really repeated that. But yeah, in later times, they just go, whatever, just beam them out. Yeah,
there's time, a lot of times it won't bother me because I don't understand how they work in the first place. And so, if the episode tells me, this is what we're doing, I'm like, okay, I think that tracks. But then when I really notice it, I feel like that's bad if I notice it,
I think that the real takeaway here is that Star Wars has shields because Star Trek had shields.
Yeah.
You don't need shields. Did Lost in Space have shields? Did Commander Cody or Rocket Man or whatever have shields? Star Trek had shields, and now everybody's got shields. And if you've got a universe like Battlestar Galactica where they don't have shields, then armor is important. So you've got a Viper fighter is just a fighter. It gets hit, sorry, you're gone. But you've got a ship like the Galactica, which is this huge, hulking, turtle-like ship that has to withstand literal nuclear impacts from opposing weapons. And so I think all the Star Trek ships wouldn't have this graceful, swan-like look to them. I think that they would be snub. I think they would be a smaller profile, and they would be, warships.
Yeah.
They would be like old Ironsides. They're heavily defended.
You put it best when you said the rock, paper, scissors. It just added this third dimension to the storytelling, I think.
Mm-hmm. You would lose the elegance of the Federation's bright future.
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
flying these turtles, these rhinos around the cosmos. Well, we definitely put work in, whether or not we succeeded. So I think we can call that good.
Hooray! Woohoo!
Yeah. We mixed Star Wars and Star Trek, and the world didn't end.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's coming. Should we tell people what's coming up in the next episode of BackTrekking?
Yes. So for our next episode, we are covering the DS9 episode, The Quickening.
Yeah.
And relating it, discussing it with a film I've never heard of. Sorry to say, but it's called They Shoot Horses, Don't They?
Yeah.
Which apparently is a classic flick that I'm just learning about. So that'll be fun.
Nominated for 7 Academy Awards, I think. Yeah, it's going to be a real party. 2 real up, real exciting, just happy-go-lucky pieces of media to check into.
They sound catchy. It sounds cool. The poster for this film has a disco ball on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ahead
disco
of its
ball
time, really.
Means party. Yeah, for sure. The movie came out in 1969, and it's set in the 1930s. So, disco balls aren't exclusive to disco, but disco definitely co-opted the disco ball. Roll the dice. Take disco balls out of disco. What do you got?
Making me think about disco balls.
Yeah. All right, well, you go off and do that, and that's it for this week's BackTrekking. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you like the show, tell a friend, and also follow us at BackTrekking on Twitter. And, of course, cooped up as we are and as you all are, we're always looking for things to cover on this show. So send us your ideas on social media. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at GooeyFame, and I got a bunch of shows up on there, so go check it out.
Great. You can find me at K-A-1-I-B-A-N on Twitter, and I'll also just point out this week the Enterprising Individuals at Enterprising Individuals Twitter. We've got a new show coming out where I interview Rob Perlman, the author of Body by Starfleet, a Starfleet workout guide, which is, I think, more important than ever because it's got a lot of great exercises that you can do at home and resources that you can use to connect to other people online to support you in your fitness journey. So check that out. And that's it for us for this week. We will see you soon, and keep on trekking.